The first thing I saw was the empty casket. The funeral parlor smelled like wax polish and fear, a strange mixture that made my stomach twist. I pressed my fingers against the soft wool of Grandma Lila's scarf, trying to anchor myself in something real while the rest of the room dissolved into rehearsed sorrow. Mom hovered near the front, her shoulders stiff, face painted in the perfect shade of mourning. Every so often, she dabbed her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, taking a dramatic sniff that echoed off the polished mahogany walls. But the subtle shine on her perfectly manicured nails betrayed the truth. The phone hidden behind her palm captured each staged tear for the audience that really mattered, her followers. Dad paced near the entrance, a storm of numbers and frustration. "These fees are outrageous," he barked at the funeral director, voice tight as he scrolled his stock alerts with one hand while gesturing with the other. Death was merely an interruption to his portfolio. Cole, my brother, slumped in the far corner, eyes glued to his phone, thumbs scrolling endlessly. He hadn't looked up in 20 minutes, not even when distant relatives approached with condolences. The glow of his cryptocurrency app illuminated his glasses in ghostly reflections. And me. I tucked myself into a corner, the weight of memory pressing against my chest. Cinnamon rolls from Sunday mornings, Grandpa Walter's steady hands guiding mine while changing oil in his first delivery truck. "Hadley girl," he'd said, "knowing how things work matters more than knowing how to buy new ones." Those hands had built more than engines, they had built trust, resilience, and a hidden empire I had no idea existed. The room blurred as my thoughts collided with reality. My grandparents were gone, and the people who should have mourned them seemed more concerned with what they could gain. Then the silence hit, the kind that wraps around your ears and suffocates the air. Aaron Feldman, our family attorney, cleared his throat and drew the room into focus. I could see the slight twitch in his eye as he adjusted his glasses, the careful measurement of each word before it left his lips. "I am required to read the final wishes of Walter and Lila Monroe as written," he said, voice firm but calm. My parents leaned forward, eager anticipation written in every crease of their faces. Cole straightened in his chair, curiosity briefly breaking through his digital haze. Aaron opened a thick envelope and began, the legal phrases washing over us until they reached the line that froze my blood. "I hereby bequeath my entire estate, valued at approximately $31.5 million, to my granddaughter, Hadley Elizabeth Martin." The air cracked. My breath caught. Dad's jaw tightened. "There must be some mistake," he muttered, but his eyes betrayed the first flicker of panic. Mom's camera-ready smile disappeared, replaced by disbelief and quiet fury. Cole's phone clattered to the floor as he lunged forward, eyes wild. "What did you do?" he demanded, voice sharp, accusing. I shook my head, voice trembling, though the certainty in it surprised even me. I didn't do anything. I swear." Aaron raised a hand, silencing the room. "They prepared for this," he said. "Everything you're seeing, everything you've schemed for, they anticipated it." A screen flickered to life, and there they were, my grandparents, sitting together on their porch swing, calm, resolute, and looking straight into the camera as if they were speaking directly to the greed that surrounded me. "If you're watching this," Grandpa began, "our decision will come as a shock to some of you." Grandma's voice was soft, deliberate. "Hadley is the only one who ever loved us for who we are, not for what we can give. She is our choice, our trust, and our hope." Tears streamed down my face. The wind rattled against the windows, a whispering reminder of everything they had built and everything my parents had tried to steal. I gripped the scarf tighter. Their love, their wisdom, and their quiet defiance had been left to me. And in that instant, I realized the war wasn't over, it had only just begun. The car ride home from the funeral felt like sliding through a tunnel with no light. Rain streaked the windshield, each drop tracing its own erratic path as if marking the chaos ahead. My grandparents' harbor house loomed in the distance, its cedar siding darkened by the storm. The place had always smelled like lemons and old books, a sanctuary, and now it was mine, but haunted by the people who wanted to take it from me. I clutched Grandma Lila's scarf as if it were a lifeline. The words from the video repeated in my mind, "Hadley is our hope." They weren't just words, they were a command, a protection, and a warning all at once. Inside, the familiar warmth of the house collided with a cold awareness. My family hadn't left the battle behind at the funeral. Mom hovered near the fireplace, inspecting antique silverware with a calculated nonchalance. Dad's presence was felt in every shadow of the room, a predator testing the terrain. Cole fiddled with his phone, a storm brewing behind the screen, always 2 steps ahead of his own conscience. Miguel Alvarez, the estate manager, greeted me at the door with a solemn nod. His face, weathered by decades of work alongside my grandparents, betrayed both concern and respect. "Miss Hadley," he said, "we need to talk." He led me to Grandpa Walter's study, a sanctuary of order amidst the chaos. Shelves lined with leather-bound ledgers, the faint scent of pipe tobacco still lingering, the polished oak desk, everything spoke of the meticulous care my grandparents had invested in both their wealth and their legacy. Miguel placed a brass key in my hand. "For the bottom drawer," he said softly. "Grandma said you'd know when the time came." I hesitated, then opened the drawer. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, worn at the edges but still full of purpose. The first entry was dated a decade ago. "Gregory came today asking for another loan. Claimed his startup was guaranteed to triple in months." Walter hesitated. I reminded him that we've seen this before. "Still, we wrote the check. Cole expects our estate to fund his ventures. Time will tell if we ever see a return." My stomach twisted. Each page turned revealed a pattern: my parents and brother, methodically draining my grandparents' wealth, leaving only smoke and mirrors in their wake. Loan requests denied, property transfers attempted, financial manipulations disguised as family concern. Their greed was relentless, their respect for their parents absent. June Porter, the housekeeper for over 20 years, entered quietly, a tray of tea in hand. Her eyes, red-rimmed but steady, fell on the open journal. "You're reading Mrs. Lila's notes," she said. Her voice carried a weight I hadn't anticipated. "She kept track of everything. You're not alone in this." She placed a banker's box on the desk, filled with documents, loan agreements, startup proposals, copies of attempted property transfers, all meticulously annotated. Each piece reinforced the truth: my grandparents had chosen me because I saw them, not the money. The intercom buzzed, jolting me. Miguel checked the monitor. 3 black vehicles had arrived at the gates. Dad's Mercedes, Mom's Range Rover, Cole's Tesla. The storm outside mirrored the one now gathering in my chest. "They're here," Miguel said, voice tight. "What do you want to do?" I took a deep breath, feeling Grandma's words in my ears. "Stand your ground, Hadley girl. Some things are worth fighting for." The intercom crackled. Dad's voice, calm but edged with menace, filled the room. "Hadley, open the gates. We're here to collect what's rightfully ours." I gripped the speaker. "I'll meet you at the steps," I said, voice steadier than I felt. Outside, rain drenched the limestone steps. The gates swung open automatically, and I stepped forward, wanting witnesses to what was about to unfold. Dad led the charge, briefcase in hand, eyes flickering with calculation. Mom followed, camera poised, while Cole lingered, uncertain. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was a reckoning. I glanced at Miguel and June behind me, then the gate, then the looming figures of my parents. Every muscle in my body tensed, a mixture of fear and resolve. They had underestimated me. They had underestimated what it meant to inherit not just wealth, but purpose. The first move in this game of power and betrayal was mine. I would not falter. The rain had slowed to a mist, but the tension outside the harbor house was electric, charged as if the clouds themselves were holding their breath. My parents and Cole stood on the steps, umbrellas dripping, faces etched with calculated entitlement. I stepped forward, feeling the weight of the brass key in my pocket and Grandma Lila's scarf tight around my neck. Miguel and June flanked me silently, the quiet calm of experience grounding my nerves. I could feel the storm inside me matching the one outside, the fear, the adrenaline, the anger all colliding. This wasn't just about money anymore, it was about respect, truth, and the values my grandparents had died protecting. Dad's voice sliced through the mist. "Hadley, you know this isn't how a family handles its own. We deserve access to what's ours." I met his gaze, steady despite the panic clawing at my chest. "What's yours?" You mean what you tried to steal while my grandparents were alive? Mom gasped, clutching her chest, a performance honed over decades. Darling, I'm done listening to lies, I cut in, raising my voice. You'll have your chance in court if you insist, but not here, not now. Cole took a tentative step forward. Maybe we can work this out. His eyes flicked nervously toward Dad and Mom, but the storm outside mirrored the storm inside him, threatening to break. I reached into the inside pocket of my coat and pulled out the USB Miguel had handed me earlier. You wanted to see what really happened, I said, my voice unwavering. I plugged it into the large screen by the porch steps. Security footage blinked to life. There they were, Dad lifting paintings in the dead of night, Cole checking safe combinations, Mom carefully wrapping silver candlesticks, all while pretending to grieve. Their faces were illuminated by porch lights, captured in perfect, damning clarity. The air shifted. Dad's eyes widened, the control he prided himself on slipping like sand through fingers. Mom's hand flew to her throat. Cole froze mid-step. This isn't what it looks like, Dad stammered. Yes, it is, I said quietly, almost to myself. And you didn't count on Grandma having cameras. You didn't count on Walter's journals. You didn't count on the people who cared enough to protect her wishes. June stepped forward, holding the folder of annotated evidence. Everything is documented. Loans, property transfers, threats. Every step you took to manipulate, every attempt to take what wasn't yours, it's all here. Cole's knees buckled slightly. Hadley. You didn't think about them, I said, voice rising. About Grandma, Grandpa, about me. Dad's face contorted with fury. He took a step toward me. You'll regret this. You can't protect yourself forever. I tightened my grip on the scarf, feeling Grandma's words pulse in my mind. Stand your ground, Hadley girl. I already am, I said. And it's not just me. Look around. From the street, the neighborhood had begun to gather. Faces I recognized from school, from church, from community projects, they watched silently, some recording on phones, others simply bearing witness. And then, to my surprise, the Summit freight drivers arrived, a line of leather jackets and work boots, eyes sharp, standing for the legacy of Walter and Lila Monroe. Evelyn Park and Marcus Shaw followed, carrying company documents and financial records. We've got your back, Evelyn said. They tried to undermine this company, but it won't happen on our watch. The first cracks in my parents' alliance were visible. Dad's composure faltered as whispers and gasps rippled through the crowd. Mom's theatrics lost all meaning in the face of witnesses who saw the truth unfold. Cole's gaze dropped to the ground. I realized then that the inheritance was more than money, it was the faith my grandparents had placed in me, and the responsibility to honor their life's work. The adrenaline surged, but so did clarity. I wasn't just defending property, I was defending legacy, values, and the people who truly mattered. A sharp knock on the door interrupted the standoff. Aaron Feldman stepped into view, legal documents in hand, his expression unreadable but resolute. I have the restraining orders and injunctions ready. Your actions today have crossed the line into illegal territory. It's over if they continue. The color drained from Dad's face. Mom's fake composure cracked completely. Cole swallowed hard. I exhaled, the first true release of tension since Grandma's funeral. This was the turning point. The storm had passed, but the path ahead would demand more than fear and adrenaline, it would demand strategy, courage, and the backbone I never knew I had until this moment. I looked down at Grandma's scarf, twisted around my neck, and whispered, I won't fail you. And for the first time, the rain didn't feel like a threat, it felt like a baptism, washing away the doubt and fear, leaving only resolve. The morning sun barely pierced the heavy gray clouds, streaking the harbor house with slanted light that seemed to spotlight every detail, every shadow. I moved through the grand foyer, keys in hand, heart hammering, acutely aware that today would not be ordinary. The air smelled of rain-damp cedar and lemon oil, the comforting scent of home, but the tension made it feel like a battlefield. Aaron Feldman met me at the study door. Hadley, they're not backing down, he said, sliding folders across the polished oak desk. Court filings, media leaks, calls to the foundation. Your parents are pulling every lever. I nodded, tracing the worn edges of the desk where Grandpa's hands had pressed decades before. We expected that, I murmured, voice steadier than I felt. We just need to be ready. And precise. June entered, carrying a small stack of boxes. I've gathered everything they tried to hide, plus documentation of their schemes. It's all here. Her eyes held a quiet intensity, decades of loyalty reflected in every measured step. I opened the top box, pulling out ledgers, letters, and photographs. Each page was a testament to greed, manipulation, and betrayal, but also to foresight. Grandma had anticipated their moves, each entry a blueprint for survival. A knock at the front door rattled the tension in my chest. Miguel opened it, ushering in a parade of allies, Evelyn Park, Marcus Shaw, Summit Freight employees, and a few trusted community members. The room began to feel alive with support, the energy of people who believed in what my grandparents had built. The doorbell rang again. I froze. Aaron's voice was calm but firm. That'll be your parents, accompanied by legal counsel. The front steps seemed to stretch endlessly as Dad, Mom, and Cole arrived, flanked by their attorneys. Dad's expression was hard, mask-like, but his eyes betrayed impatience. Mom's carefully constructed sympathy was gone, replaced by visible calculation. Cole fidgeted behind them, uncertainty flashing across his face. I stepped onto the porch, my heart racing but my mind clear. Sit, I said simply, gesturing toward the garden chairs I'd arranged. We're doing this here, openly. Transparency, or it ends now. Dad laughed, a hollow sound. Transparency? This is family, Hadley. You can't, you already tried, I interrupted. You tried to rewrite family with deceit. I won't let it happen. Not here. Not ever. The lawyers began exchanging notes, but the tension pulsed faster than legal maneuvering. I saw Dad's jaw tighten, Mom's hands tremble as she gripped her bag, Cole's gaze flicker toward the garden's perimeter cameras. They were realizing the stage had shifted, their control slipping. Aaron stepped forward, opening a folder. We've filed restraining orders. Unauthorized access to the property, harassment of foundation staff, and threats of illegal coercion are all documented. The court will enforce these immediately if they continue. Dad's face flushed crimson, the practiced calm shattering. You think you can bully us with laws, he spat. I held up Grandma's scarf, twisting it between my fingers. I'm not bullying. I'm protecting what's ours, what they trusted me with. And this ends today. From the sidelines, I watched the community step closer. Former drivers, neighbors, friends, they weren't silent witnesses anymore. They were shields. Their presence was a tangible force that my family hadn't anticipated. And in that, I felt a rush of power I hadn't known I could claim. Cole shifted, breaking slightly from their side. Dad, maybe we should stay, I said, voice firm, and he froze, caught between loyalty and clarity. Mom's mascara-streaked face twisted in anger and fear. Darling, this can all be settled quietly, she said, almost pleading, but the conviction in my tone cut through. I stepped closer, carefully unfolding evidence files, showing transactions, letters, and recordings. Each page landed like a gavel, a reminder that intent mattered as much as action. My grandparents had left me more than wealth, they'd left strategy, truth, and the unshakable moral authority of foresight. Dad's hand twitched toward the folders, but Aaron's presence and the witnesses froze him. I saw the first flicker of doubt, the tiniest crack in the fortress of entitlement they'd built. Mom's lips quivered, a mask failing, and Cole's shoulders sagged under the weight of reality. I inhaled deeply. The storm had reached the peak. Outside, the clouds darkened, the harbor's waves churning as if in response. Inside, every decision, every stance, every word would determine not just the fate of my inheritance, but the truth about who we were as a family and who I was meant to be. I held up the final piece, Grandma Lila's leather-bound journal. Everything in here is witness to the lives you tried to exploit, I said. Today, the truth decides. And the truth doesn't bend. Silence fell. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The final confrontation was coming, and for the first time, I felt ready not just to defend what was mine, but to claim the legacy they had entrusted me to protect. The sun had just begun to dip behind the harbor, casting a molten gold glow across the waves. I stood on the balcony of the harbor house, Grandma's scarf wrapped snugly around my neck, the same one she had worn the last winter she walked these halls. The scarf carried her warmth, her presence, and now, her trust. I could feel it settle around me, steadying my racing thoughts and bruised heart. Inside, the house was calm. Aaron had left earlier, leaving instructions and folders that detailed every safeguard, every protective legal measure we could implement. Marcus and Evelyn had returned to their offices, confident that operations were secure. And June, faithful, unwavering June, had started organizing the attic, cataloging heirlooms and documents so nothing could ever be misappropriated again. The quiet hum of this house, the gentle ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, felt like a heartbeat syncing with my own. I thought back to the storm of the past weeks, the confrontations, the threats, the suffocating tension as my family tried to wrest everything from my hands. I remembered their faces, Dad's controlled rage cracking under pressure, Mom's manufactured sympathy giving way to desperation, Cole's indecision oscillating between loyalty and clarity. I had faced them, exposed their intentions, and yet I hadn't simply defended what was mine. I had honored the lives of those who had entrusted me with this responsibility. Sitting by the window with my journal, I began to write, not just in my own voice, but echoing the lessons Grandpa and Grandma had instilled in me. Integrity matters more than inheritance. Trust is not given, it is earned and upheld. Courage is not loud, it is quiet, steady, unwavering. I wrote for myself, for them, and for the future that would carry their values, not just their fortune. The house was alive with small signs of normalcy returning. Professor, Grandma's old cat, leapt onto the windowsill, brushing against my hand as if approving of the choices I had made. The roses Grandma had planted decades ago were bursting with late blooms, their scent filling the rooms like a gentle benediction. Outside, the harbor glimmered, every wave reflecting the fading sunlight, reminding me that life moved on, persistent and unyielding. A knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find a group of students, the first scholarship recipients of the Lila and Walter Monroe Foundation. Their eyes were wide, nervous but eager. One held a neatly folded envelope in her hands, another clutched a small notebook. I welcomed them in, guiding them through the halls that had once felt heavy with grief and tension, now warm and alive with purpose. We sat in the dining room, and I explained the Foundation's mission: full tuition for vocational training, living stipends, apprenticeships, and mentorship. The excitement in their eyes, the gratitude in their voices, filled a space that no money alone could ever occupy. This was the inheritance I had truly received, a legacy of hope, empowerment, and trust in human dignity. Later, alone in the study, I placed Grandpa's pocket watch on the desk, aligning it precisely as he once had. I ran my fingers over the leather-bound journal, the ledgers, and the meticulous notes that Grandma had left behind. They were no longer just objects, they were reminders of resilience, of vigilance, of love that transcended bloodlines. I realized then that the house, the documents, the fortune, they were all extensions of a much larger truth, the values that shaped people, not the wealth that tempted them. The evening settled quietly, the golden light fading into a soft lavender horizon. I walked the garden paths, feeling the damp grass beneath my feet, pausing at each rose bush that had been planted with intention. Each bloom was a memory, each petal a lesson whispered across time. Standing there, I whispered softly, as if speaking to Grandma and Grandpa themselves, "I understand now. I will honor you, not with words, but with choices. With courage. With care." And in that stillness, I felt their presence, not in the shadows of the rooms, but in the decisions I would make, in the lives I would touch, in the legacy I would carry forward. The weight of $31 million had never been mine to hold, the responsibility, the values, the vision that was the true inheritance. And I would guard it, nurture it, and let it grow, long after the echoes of conflict had faded. The night air carried the faint scent of roses and cedar. I stood on the porch, the harbor before me, and let the silence settle like a benediction. The storm had passed. The legacy endured. And for the first time, I felt not just the courage of my grandparents, but my own. The inheritance that mattered most had nothing to do with wealth. It was here, in the quiet strength of family redefined, in justice served, in life lived with purpose. And that truth, at last, was mine.